hello, good evening. I was not going to do this, but for some reason I have spontaneously decided to film a video. Not really sure why, but I didn't do a weekly video this week, and so I thought maybe it's the end of the week, it's Friday night, it's 10 p.m, and I'm going to start recording a video. So hi, hello, welcome. My name is Michaela. I'm a PhD student at the University of Tübingen, and next week I am flying to St Andrews in Scotland to present my research at a conference. I am so excited, but I leave on Monday. I need to leave home around like 8:30, 9ish, and I have only just started working on this presentation. For a bit of context, I am doing a million things all at once. So basically I am a full-time PhD student, but I'm also working for a project in New Zealand, and we have a book coming out next year, and so we are writing the manuscript at the moment, and that has to be done by August 22nd. So my whole life is very blocked out and scheduled at the moment, and I basically have a certain number of tasks that I can do each day in order to stay on top of stuff, and if something takes longer than expected, I'm kind of screwed. So basically last week I was in Utrecht for a conference, like workshop thing. I filmed that. You should be able to see it. It should be out already theoretically, but my editing skills at the moment are poor, to say the least. And so I had that last week, and then there was a conference in Tübingen this week on Thursday, which was like a workshop with pre-circulated papers, and so you had to read the papers before you could go to the conference because the presentations were short, and the whole point was to discuss the papers. And I was moderating one of the sessions, so I wanted to go because it was my friend's workshop, but also I had to go because I was moderating one of the sessions, but I also had to do the readings and so forth. So I spent the beginning of this week doing the readings for that, and that took slightly longer than expected, so I didn't actually get to finish them. I also forgot to say that over the weekend I had another task, which was to finish a chapter that I was working on that I just hadn't got around to actually doing the writing for, so I blocked that in for the weekend. Spent the whole weekend writing. I wrote about like 8,000 words, and I was supposed to finish that Sunday night so that I could start doing the readings on Monday for the conference on Thursday. And unfortunately I didn't finish it Sunday night, and I spent the whole of Monday writing this thing, and I submitted it at like 11 p.m. at night, and then I had a work call to go into that started at 11 p.m. so it was the whole thing. So I basically started the readings for the Thursday conference on Tuesday and Wednesday, had the conference on Thursday, and today's Friday. So today's the first day that I actually have time to start writing this conference paper for next week. And I have to present it on Wednesday, so I do have time, thankfully. It's not like I'm presenting on Monday or anything, but I don't realistically have that much time to work on it. I basically have tomorrow because today is Friday and I was doing some readings and some context for filling in gaps that I needed, and then tomorrow I've got to write it. Sunday I'm on worship at church, and so I'm going to be out for most of the day, unfortunately, with that. And also I need to pack, and then Monday I'm traveling, and I hate working on planes, but if I do need to, I will work on the plane. And then we land at like 3ish, and then traveling to the place, checking in, probably gonna walk around because it's gonna be the only time that I have to walk around. Like there's not much that's gonna be happening on the Monday, and then Tuesday full day's conference, and then Wednesday I'm presenting. So we've got a very tight schedule. But basically the whole point of this video is I thought that I would take you through start to finish how I write a conference paper, because I've realized I haven't done that before. I've taken you through how I write a chapter for my thesis, and I've kind of talked through the writing process vaguely when I've been writing conference papers, but I haven't like actually written it with you. And so I thought spontaneously, I don't know why, tell me why I'm doing this, I've got enough on my schedule, but I thought I would take you through how I write a conference paper. And so the first thing that I have done, if I'm gonna be honest, I forgot what I submitted for the abstract proposal, and so I actually read through what I said I was going to talk about, and I'm going to be honest, there is too much in here. I don't know what I thought I was doing, but there's like an hour-long paper in here, if not more. But this is a paper that I'm going to be writing as a chapter contribution. It's publication coming out later, and so this is kind of the idea of what I'm going to be writing for that chapter, so that's probably where my brain went. But this is just too much information, so I'm not going to be presenting on all of this. So what I did do is I took out what I actually said I was going to speak on, and I turned it into like a list of what I said in terms of like what techniques I would be talking about, and then I said I was going to talk about audience and what specifically about the audience I said I'd talk about, and then obviously you've got to have examples, and so what examples I thought or supposedly said that I'd talk about. So I went through and made this list, which is really helpful. I'm obviously not going to be presenting on all of this because I don't have time. I might make a comment here or there, but it is at least mapping out the suggested things that I could talk about. So I'm actually starting with the examples because that's obviously going to inform the techniques of what I'm talking about, because I'm not just going to talk about techniques in general, I'm going to talk about the techniques that he actually uses in these examples. And so that's where I'm currently at. I have gone through, and there's basically one of my arguments that I'm making is that he deals with the same story in 2 different texts. And so what I've gone and done is I found the 2 different versions of the stories and I've put them in with the English translations. These aren't my translations, this is somebody else's. And then I've put in the Latin afterwards, and what I'm currently doing is this. Basically all the orange bits are similarities between his texts. The bits that are bolded are literal direct copies, which is brilliant because my whole argument is that people only look at one side or the other side, but they never look at the examples together. And so the fact that there's this much similarities, like he's literally copied this word for word and then changed a few things. I can talk about the things that he's changed and the things that he's putting in. Like in this version of the story, he's got a whole bunch of context afterwards, whereas in this version of the story he's got a whole bunch of context beforehand, and it's different context things that he's bringing up, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, and then I can talk about the things that he copied and what this says about like him plagiarizing himself in different sources, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing at the moment, and then I just need to go through and mark out like the temporal markers, and then also what the story is actually based on as a biblical story. So I need to go through and copy in the biblical story to figure out what similarities he's taken from that. And then yeah, that's pretty much probably the only time that I'm going to have in this talk. I might actually bring in one more example because I know with this crowd I always talk about this story because it's like such a good example. So I don't know, I might bring in another story just so that I have something else to talk about, especially because when it comes to like his narrative techniques of like a lack of chronology and anonymity, there's one story that I think fits this absolutely perfectly, and so I might talk about that story just briefly just so that I can make a really good comment about this, and especially because then that kind of says specific things about its audience. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm going to keep going. I pretty much want to finalize the 2 examples today so that I can just write tomorrow, and I'm going to be writing around the examples. Obviously it shouldn't, fingers crossed, take very long to write this because it's just a conference presentation. But yeah, I also need to figure out how many words I need to write because I have slowed down my talking process, which is a very good thing. I used to talk way too fast in conferences, so I've slowed it down. So I need to remember, because I haven't written a conference paper in a while, I need to figure out what my word count needs to be so that I'm fitting into the 25-minute time limit that we've got. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do now, and then I'll let you know at the end of the day what I'm up to. Hello. It is the next day. It's actually 2:43 p.m, which brings me absolutely no joy because I only have until 5 p.m. today to finish this thing. But I got up this morning and I was working on it before Luke woke up, and then we had breakfast and we tidied the house a little bit, and then we had to go out shopping because I needed some stuff for the trip, and we needed to print out the paperwork so we can get back into the country. And yeah, so we've had a bit of a busy time, but we're back now and I'm gonna get straight into work basically. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by messages on my computer. So I thought I'd show you what I've done because obviously I forgot to fill you in last night with what I got up to. So I have identified the 2 examples that I'm going to be using, or at least what the 2 sections of my presentation are going to be. Like I said yesterday, had too many talking points, and so I tried to find 2 examples that covered the most talking points so that I don't have to give too much introductory info. I can kind of just go through the story and then bring in the talking points when it gets to that point of the story. And so the first story that I have is actually one story that is shown in 2 different sources. So I'm going to be basically talking about how you can't just take my author for his historiography. He also wrote like hagiography and saints' lives and miracles, and that in order to understand him as an author, you really need to take the whole thing in. And so I found a story that he repeats in 2 different episodes. I think I showed you this yesterday. And so this is what I'm going to be talking about first, and then I'm going to bring in like the differences that he brings up, but also I can start talking about anonymity and the way he fiddles with time within the episodes and so forth. And then the second episode that I found is a story in his historiography. Unfortunately, it's the one that I just have the most examples for because it's so much longer than the other ones. And so yeah, and the thing that I'm going to do with that is about delayed revelation. So that then is bringing in more of the anonymity, more of the like foreshadowing, inserted speeches, but then also his own commentary. He has a lot of, I found a name for it, what's it called? Authorial intrusion. So it's where he talks like directly to the audience rather than it being like narrative dialogue or him explaining something. It's his own commentary, and that story has a lot more of that side of it. So yeah, that's kind of the thing that I did last night, is finalizing those and then putting all of the Latin and everything in one document so that I can just go through it and analyze it. And then this morning I set up my speech document. So I always have a certain format that I follow because I upload these to my academia.edu afterwards, so that if anyone wants to read it if they couldn't make it, but also if people want to keep on top with what I'm studying. I think it's a really cool topic, and I don't think a lot of people have looked into this side before, and so I would rather update people as I go and put it up there. It's also like it's not like it's the final thesis, so I don't mind if people read it. I would rather get commentary on it. And so yeah, I kind of set out the format for that, and I've written the introduction, and I was just about to start writing about my first example when Luke woke up. So that's what I'm going to do now. I've pretty much got 2 hours until we have to start tidying up the house for people to come over. So I'm going to try and get as much done as possible in those 2 hours. And worst case scenario, I'm just going to have to get up early tomorrow to finish it, because it has to be done by midday tomorrow. That's like my ultimate cutoff. So yeah, just want to say hello, welcome to the next day. I've made myself a tea, I've got some good music, and I'm ready to get writing. Okay, so long story short, I didn't actually film anything while I was writing because I was just on a massive time crunch, but I am very happy to say that it is done, and I will tell you how many words it came through. 4,300. Now that feels like ridiculously long for 25 minutes, and I'm gonna say it was probably a little bit long. I'm probably pushing it a little bit, but there's just so much to get through, and I don't know, it just, you know, sometimes it's just needed. I'm sure it'll be fine. I have actually gone through and finished everything. So I've got my first example here, my second example here, and I am actually somebody who footnotes in presentations. I know not everybody does this, but like I said, I upload these to academia.edu afterwards, and I feel like I want people to see the information and where I'm getting it from, because it's really annoying when I'm reading something like this and I don't know where the person's drawing from because they haven't footnoted. It's just a personal thing. Not everyone does this. But I also feel like if I'm in question time after my paper and somebody asks me something specifically, I find it really difficult if I can't recall who spoke that. And I feel like it's just, you know, it's just a prompt. If somebody asks me about something, I can just look down at the footnote and be like, oh yeah, that's that person. And then it almost jogs my memory for other thing that they've said so that I can expand on it.
And so yeah, I'm definitely somebody who puts stuff in the footnotes. Not everybody does this, but I've just found it really helpful. My memory is absolutely terrible, and so I find it so much easier if I can have those prompts. But I also have the Latin in here because obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but for me, I am not going to be speaking Latin when I'm in the middle of a conference presentation. Not everyone knows Latin. My Latin pronunciation isn't great. Everyone pronounces stuff differently anyway. I'm definitely more prone towards the German pronunciation of Latin than other people. I especially know that there's a very specific, like, British English pronunciation of Latin, and so, do you know what? I'm just going to do it in English. There's also, I don't think it really matters in a presentation. I think it's more about getting my point across than showing my expertise or lack of expertise of Latin. Anyway, for anyone reading it online, they can have the Latin there. But it also means during question time, if somebody asks me about something in particular, the Latin's right there and I can just use it as a reference. I have also gone through and added in all of the prompts of when I need to change slide, and I have to tell everyone this is like the most vital part of a presentation paper, is putting in when you need to change the slide. It's so clunky if people don't have a good presentation slide, or if like it times up wrong and people have to go back and forth, and like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have done that myself, but it's such an easy thing to do to make it a little bit smoother. And so if you don't do this, I would 100% recommend doing this. It's so easy. You just highlight the section where it changes slide, and if you've got a clicker, if you're using the keyboard, anything, it's just, you know, it's there. And it also means that you can do cool things. I'll show you my slides in a second, but it does mean that you can do cool things like add small things into the slides as it comes up. And so, oh, I haven't done it here. Maybe this is the section. I don't know. It does mean that like on the same slide, you can bring stuff up as it comes up so that you're not just like bombarding people with information. They get to see the slides as it come up. Maybe I'll just show you. Here I've got my full slideshow, and obviously this is just an information dump, but it means that as I'm reading through my slide, I can change things through and people can see exactly what I'm talking about. But it means that they're not just being like information dumped with everything on a slide and they've got to try and figure out what part I'm talking about. So this is what I mean by like highlighting it, so you know exactly when to change it, so people know exactly what they're looking at. Anyway, that's done. I'm super excited for it. I'm sure that it's gonna go however it goes. Not everyone's great at conference presentations, and I feel like for me they're either hit or miss. Either I do, if I can toot my own horn, a really good job and I present really well and I get really good feedback, and sometimes it just like horrendously flops. So hopefully it's not a flop, and hopefully I get good feedback for this example, because this is the example that I am writing the article on that's going to be published. It's going to be my first published article, so I'm really hoping that it goes well. And yeah, I know I've got my headphones on, sorry. But I'm using this to try and not shout. But thank you so much for watching. I know that this was a really random video, but I'm gonna look back on this one day and be like, oh, I wonder how I used to write conference papers. I'm sure that further on in the future, maybe when I'm in like a postdoc, or I don't know, a bit more seasoned for this, that I'll have a different method. And so it's just cool to record the way that I do things right now. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you with another video very soon.